Man, Saturday morning. What's happening, everybody? Formers Anonymous. You know what this is about. We got our Saturday morning going here, as always. Oh, Sunday morning. What am I talking about, man? Day behind. Look at me, old, forgetting what day it is. I'm going to get these invites sent out. I know there's a whole group of you who have asked me to make sure I send them out weekly. I apologize if I miss you. The way I have to share this is much different than normal. I don't know why, uh, but I know what I'm going to do actually. I'm going to introduce Sammy Wrangle. Sammy, let's get him into the stream. What's up, my brother from another mother?
What's happening, foe?
Nothing much, man. I was digging your TikTok. You guys don't know, Sammy has a TikTok, uh, and it is pretty cool. He shows all the crazy stuff he has to do out there on his farm. Uh, what,
Gosh.
what's the info of your TikTok?
I think it's just my name, Sammy Ringo. Let me look it up. I
Thought
never
it was
looked myself
Sam
up, so I
Max or
don't know.
something.
Hold on, let me see. Yeah, it's at here. Let me type it in, or you type it in. It's at SAMANX21.
All right, I'll get that in there. I'm going to send these
Shamanic
invites out real quick.
21. Yeah.
So, how you feeling this morning, brother?
I'm feeling good, man. A little sleepy. Celine turned 21 a week ago, and
Yeah.
my gift to her was to uh, take her to the casino for the first time yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
How'd that go?
it was okay. She's learning, so she played blackjack, roulette. She played some of the slots, and um, you know, it was a good time, man. It was fun to watch her just kind of do her thing. Put some money down and try to
Heck
bet.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we had a good time. But of course, we got in late, and then I went to bed late. So I've been up for a few hours already, though.
And nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I got up at. I worked. I went back to work yesterday for the first time since surgery. So for a
Oh no
little over
way!
2 months, yeah, I was back
Okay.
at work, hanging out, having a good time. I'm embarrassed by calling it work because most of the time it's not. Although we'd hit our busy streaks, man, it's really just retail. Uh, but it was definitely interesting. I got back. I closed, so I didn't get back till after 9, and stayed up and watching TV, and then passed out. And woke up at 5 o'clock this morning. All right, I am almost done putting out these invites. I apologize, bro. I got to do this third party because doing it on the PC is not going well. A minute. All right, but yeah, going back to work was definitely it's been different not going in. You know what I mean? Being out of
Yeah,
work for so long and then
yeah.
going back to it. Um, there's some mental struggles there. You know what I mean? Like, but it was definitely a good day. I enjoyed myself. I got up super early this morning, and we're right back at it this afternoon. Or well, what's I guess it's still this morning.
Man, I know last week we were talking about um, what it means to essentially um, start to think about yourself and your life a little differently, right? Like
Yeah.
what's important to you, right? Like if you really just because I think you always got to distill this down to the simplest terms, right? And so step two is question, can you identify anything that's important to you? And it's going to be, and I like that approach because it's going to be different for everyone.
Right.
You know, Traditionally it's talked about a higher power, like having to center on that, but not everyone relates to that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Um,
I absolutely do. I
and
absolutely do understand what you mean.
it's in my opinion, it's like it doesn't really matter or the detail of what you identify because let me turn that off because your reason for living, your reason for changing can be different from mine. And unless I'm applying some sort of value judgment on what I think yours are versus mine are, right? That creates polarization, right? That creates people going to their opposite ends of camp because they're saying, "Oh, well, you believe that, and I believe this, so we're not the same, right? We're different." And in many ways, I'm just trying to say, if you could sit at a table full of people and everyone wrote down what was important to them, you would see some similarities, but you would also see some differences in what those answers are. And for you, those answers are true, right? Like it doesn't
Yeah,
have to be the same for it to be true. That's crazy.
absolutely.
That's what's crazy about it, right? It doesn't have you can answer the question and it doesn't have to be the same for it to be true. It's not a multiple choice A, B, C, and D only.
Yeah,
Right. It's a multiple choice, open-ended. Like you can fill in your blank, you
I
know.
agree. I agree. Good morning, Erica. Good morning, Sabrina. I see we got a couple other people on here. Lizzie, Steph, Glenn, what's up, brother? My primo, Paul, Kitos, what's up, brother? Love. And thank you guys all for coming in, sharing, commenting. Um, yeah, hit that like button, hit that share. Let's talk about morning, bro. So Sammy, Glenn in the comments here, he just came home. He's been out in Vegas for 20 plus years. Uh, he was my foster brother. We lived together as kids, got locked up
No,
together. Yeah, he just came home. He's with us now, man. It's pretty amazing having him around. Uh, we've been talking about the past, and it's funny because I know how lucky I am, right? Like when I sit down at dinner at the dinner table, when I sit down in my home, when I go outside, when I whine about being in pain or the struggles of everyday life, I still recognize how amazingly lucky I am, right? And Glenn and I have been talking about stuff like things that we would do as kids or had to do as kids to survive, and it's been a great reminder, right? Just that little reminder after a couple of months of being in pain and after surgery and all the things that have happened over the last 3 years. Like sometimes I forget, right? Sometimes I start to mire and wallow a little, and it was nice having them come back and remind me and talk and laugh and what's up, Tony? I love you, brother. Uh, it's been a good reminder about that path. You know what I mean? The path that I'm walking on. Uh, that we're all trying to walk on right now. So that's my brother Glenn. We all know Tony, the man.
welcome home, Glenn.
Welcome
Welcome home,
home, brother.
man.
Yeah, he's been clean sober 20 plus years, man. So
Where's he at now? Is he still in?
he's in my living room.
Oh, he's in the living room.
Playing with Tater and Lizzie.
How did he go from Vegas to out here, though?
He got into his car. He saved up a couple of his paychecks and drove home, and then started looking for a job and got one. He came home. It was
I
time.
never understood the draw to Racine, though. Like,
This is home.
what?
This is where his kids are. This is where his family is.
Oh, okay.
He had
Well,
nothing
how do
in
you
Vegas.
spend 25 years in Vegas and call this home?
I mean,
I'm confused.
hey, morning, Mikasu. This is all. Hey, Tiffy, love you, boo. This has always been home. Like, I know you don't like Racine. I know it bothers you, the snow.
It's Wisconsin in general.
Yeah, the snow and everything else. The rest of us, right, truly love this place.
You're not even from here.
So you know what? You're right. I'm from LA, but that entire trip, I told you about that. When Dave and I took that trip out to Cali, when we drove out to San Diego, I was so excited. I kept thinking about going home. As soon as I got back home to LA, and we went and ate at Pink's, and we went down to Hollywood, and we went downtown, and we went to Santa Monica. All I could think about, right? My whole life since I've been here, I've been thinking about going back there. And the entire time I was there, I just wanted to be here. Right? This is my home now. This is my home. I love it here. I love the people. I love my community. I love my neighborhood. Uh, this is my home now, man. LA is where I'm from, but this is my home. I love Racine, bro. I know you hate it. I know you hate it. Bobby, what's up, mi hermano? Hey, Kurt. Man, I love seeing you. I love seeing you on here, Kurt. You too, Bobby. Hey, a great Bobby, man, did 27 years. He's been home for a little while now. Just started a venture with Expo. Congratulations. Keep doing that work. Keep walking out there with the men and women who are coming home from incarceration and showing them that we can find a way that that brings us back to our community in a positive manner, bro. Kirk has been my friend since I was a little kid too. Since I moved here from LA, I love you, bro. So, anyways, last week we did a quick synopsis of step 2. As quick as it could be in an hour and a half. It's really hard to share the depth of a step in one episode. And what we're trying to do here really quickly, right? Because we had worked our way through 6, right? Step 6, doing as much as we could, right? A couple of shows at a time. But we're going to quickly just do a quick synopsis of every step for the next few weeks, so we can break it down and we can identify how it helps all of us, regardless of what we're doing in life or what our walk is. We don't have to be active in an addiction to benefit from these things, right? I think that's one of the big misunderstandings when it comes to recovery or a 12-step program or any kind of literature or education. We think we have to be in the throes of an addiction to benefit from these things. And so we kind of pass over them, right? We kind of walk past them and say, hey, you know what? I only drink on the weekends and not very often. Then I can't learn anything from this. Whereas, Formers applies to the entirety of your life, right? It's a lifestyle change. We don't care where you're at. We don't care what you're doing. If you're here with us, we're growing and making our lives better. So for those of you who feel like I don't have an addiction, I think you can still benefit from participating. I still think you can benefit from learning. So
Yeah, not everyone who comes here actually has an addiction. Like,
right.
We get people who come here because whatever they're dealing with, the way we approach our lives has benefits that transfer over to lives in general, right? Um, this is some of us might have been drawn here for reasons around addiction, which is the primary reason this group was made, was to help men and women struggling with street life, addiction to street life, right? Which can mean jails, prisons, institutions, streets. Some folks had drug addictions, some folks didn't.
Yeah.
Some folks go to other groups to get certain aspects of their life managed and still come here for other parts that they don't feel are fulfilled there but get fulfilled here, and vice versa, right? We're not claiming to be the catch-all. I'm just saying that when we look at what we've heard around our tables, is that people from all walks of life, addiction, non-addiction, crime, non-crime, streets, non-streets, we've had everyone like that at our table over the years. And I'm really proud of the fact that no matter who came to our table, whether it was a victim, a perpetrator, a loved one, a significant other, whatever, a day one person, people have found that we have something to offer. Um, you know, it's amazing. And I think that happens when you can stay close to the purpose of the group.
Yeah.
And as these other groups say, principles before personalities. Not everyone has been able to do that, but as you see, they kind of just phase in and phase out. What it's if you're trying to live by principles, it's for those people who might not be there yet, who are thinking about personalities. Being around people who live by principles is hard to be around because it's a constant reminder of what work has to be done, right? And so I think the fact that we stay true to our principles is what really keeps our environment, for the most part, toxic free. It's like the toxicity can't really survive the light of just being honest and straightforward, right? It gets revealed, and so I think as we come together, I think it's important to recognize that. So whatever brought you here, what we're more concerned about is what you bring with you, right? Not what brought you to the table, but what you bring to the table. So what do you have to offer us and the world around us through your presence, right? And a lot of times it's just your presence. That's enough.
Yeah.
But we're also trying to advance the cause and make 12-step simple and easy to digest without losing the important parts of it that will help you make forward progress.
Absolutely. So
it's funny to listen to Greg talk about us being out east.
Glenn, yeah, we are out east for him.
I'm not out east, but I guess I am, kind of, sort of.
You're in the Missouri.
Hey, you want to see something nuts? I just realized this. So I'm at my desk and I find 2 phones. But wait, if that's not enough, hold on. Wait a minute.
Identical remotes too. Backups, bro. Backups. I love the landline.
No, they're from different TVs. They're from different TVs.
Oh, really?
And then what is going on at my desk right now? I don't even know, man. I'm like, oh, gotta clean up.
Right. I wouldn't show you my desk right now because you'd go into a fit.
I've seen your desk.
Yeah. Glad I have the camera pointed higher. All right. So why don't we get into it here? Why don't let's open up step 3. Double trouble, Sammy.
I've been called worse.
So all right, guys, I'm gonna open up my screen. We're gonna share step 3. We'll start. All right, I'm so happy for you, Missy. You got your studio together. We'll have to hit up and talk. So
let me and just for technical purposes, Monte, I still cannot see comments in StreamYard. I have to be looking at the Facebook.
Yeah.
That has not been solved yet.
I know, and so
I think I need a login.
No, it's not you. I can't see them through our StreamYard either. So we're having a communication difficulty between StreamYard and Facebook. Facebook will not allow comments that aren't public onto my StreamYard. And even though our pages are public, I have to get some special permission through Facebook to broadcast. So I have an appointment with the Facebook moderator admin tomorrow. I forgot her name. I've worked with her before on my company website, Facebook site. She's going to help me go through and fix it. If she can't, I'm going to ask people who are smart like John Sidoti to come in and see if he can figure out the software. It's a software problem on our end. So we'll have to figure it out from there. So,
all right. So I think it's important to kind of tie step 2 to step 3, right? You have to understand the transition. So step one was about essentially coming to terms with the fact that something wasn't working, that something was wrong, and that a part of that dynamic was this idea that you lost control. What is loss of control? Let's say you're pushing a car in neutral up a hill, right? There's force pushing back and you pushing on the car, right? And then you get to the top of the hill. Loss of control would be the moment where the car gets over the top of the hill and of its own momentum starts to go down the hill, right? And then you not wanting the car to go down the hill, but because of how heavy it is, the force driving the car down, you're grabbing onto the bumper trying to slow it down, but what ends up happening?
It drags you down.
That car takes over and
Right.
you don't let go and you hang on. And the loss of control is the moment you realize you are no longer the force moving the vehicle. The vehicle is moving you, dragging you. And you will either die hanging onto that bumper, because that thing is never going to stop going downhill. Ride it all the way out until you get to the bottom of the hill. And, by that time you've been extremely damaged. Or somewhere along the ride down, you realize I can't control this. I need to release my grip on it. So, in a nutshell, think of loss of control in those terms, right?
Okay.
Now, when you get to step two, you've resolved that you've lost control. You've accepted that. You've like, okay, I give up. I surrender. Right? I surrender. So now you're at step two and you realize I for the first time in a long time, I think there's a chance to recover. Right? Because you've assessed how much damage you have a little bit, like you've been able to assess it. And so by step two, you're like, okay, I get it. I've done it. Now knowing that this isn't working and I want to be somewhere else, I need the solution. Now, addiction has you believing that there is something you and you alone can do to resolve the world, not your problems, but the world's problems. Because we know that if we do things in a certain way, we can change reality. We can change the outcomes of reality, the outcomes of just about it. If we can alter reality enough through chemistry, alchemy, whatever we want to call it, if we can alter reality enough, I can accept the world that I live in. Well, by step two, you're recognizing, well, I can't alter it. You can't stop reality. You can close your eyes to it, stick your head in the ground. You can call it something else other than reality, but it's still reality, right? You can even come up with alternate facts if you want to.
Yep.
But by the end of the day, when you get to step two, you've recognized, okay, I can't do that stuff. Not really, if I want to live a good life. And so you start to realize that you've lost touch with your reality. You're with your sanity. You want to turn it back on so that you can start to plug back into life. And then something else starts to happen. So you're like, okay, what are the reasons I want to do this, right? Because we're basically helping you answer the why. If you've ever been in coaching, like life coaching, the question you're always asked to ask is, what is the reason you want to do any of this? And then you say, well, I want to do it, so I'm healthier. Well, why is that important? And you boil down the why until you really get down to the big why, like the big reasons. And so step two is kind of like distilling it down. Well, I want to get better for my kids. That by itself sounds like a great answer. But if I say, why do you want to be better with your kids? And now you got to think about, well, what is the reason? well, they deserve me, they need me, I'm committed to them, I love them, I owe them more. Why do you feel that way? And then so you just keep going with why until there's really no other, you're just kind of in a corner with your why, and you're like, ultimately, it's how I express the best parts of myself, loving my children, being there for me. And now every time you feel like giving up, you've already or you need motivation, you've already identified what's most important to you, those spiritual connections,
Right.
those spiritual principles. These are the most important things in your life. Now those are the things that motivate you, right? It's your deep motivation. So remember, in the beginning, it might sound weird. It might sound weird. Missy says it's called kids. It might sound weird that saying, "Oh, it's my kids." As I said in my example, it's I want to do this for my kids. You might think that's the only reason you need, but actually, if it was the only reason you needed, it never would have got this bad.
Right.
Right. It never would have gotten it if kids or partners or whatever it was, there was something that interfered between you choosing those most important things and you choosing the lifestyle you chose. Something came in between that already, which means if you think of that as cancer, that cancer already infected parts of your life that you were trying to protect at one point, to the point where it overrode and overtook the relationship. Right? If our relationships were all that it took, oh yeah, that too, Missy. if relationships were all that it took to keep someone clean and sober, there'd be a lot less heartbreak in the world.
Oh,
but
man.
Right?
Right.
But we know that relationships, there is not a person, there's not a place, there's not a thing that is safe from addiction, that is safe from cancer, that is safe from, street life. It infects everything. And so a lot of times we have to revisit what was it that we lost connection with. And then we have to figure out we have to decide if we want to reestablish a connection with it, right? Because remember, I spent a lot of time talking about the 8 relationships and being disconnected from all 8.
Right.
And even if you're disconnected from one of the 8 or one of the 4, it still creates such an imbalance, right? It's like having one missing lug nut and then 4 other ones that are loose.
Right.
You might think, oh, I can live without that one, but it affects everything else. It throws it all out of balance. You need all 8 in balance. And believe it or not, there's another one, but I don't really ever talk about that one. There's another relationship, but that comes, you kind of got to find that out on your own. If you ask me, you'll find it if you stick with the process. So what we learn in step 2 is that when I make these connections, I start to realize that the solution to my problem is beyond my own self-will. Mm-hmm. It's not enough for me to just want to do it through willpower. I realize that I need to also nurture and manage my relationships with others. And I hope that makes sense, right? It's when you realize that you have to connect with the world around you. If that makes sense, I hope it does. And Heather, I'll come back to that. I hear you. I see that, right? If we have time, we'll touch base a little bit on that. But step 2, we start to identify what are the things that really matter to me, because that hasn't been on the front of my mind as much as my addiction has. And in your addiction, when you are actively in your addiction and it does come to mind, you know what it does? It causes shame and guilt, which normally leads to more denial, because we're like, I don't want to feel that. Let me wipe it out. And now I'm not thinking about it. My kids will be fine. I'll be fine. wife or my husband will be fine, or we'll get through the, it'll get greater later, whatever. We just distance ourselves from it, but we don't really address it. Right.
I agree.
Now, step 3 comes in. So now we realize, okay, I need to think about my bigger principles, my bigger relationships, start to play with the idea that maybe I could salvage some of it. And as soon as you have that kind of thought, it's hope. That's hope. Hope starts to come back. Because remember, step 1 is I'm completely hopeless. This shit is in disarray.
A short
step
time
2,
ago. A short
step
time
2 is
ago, we just drove off the rails.
Yeah, right. It's like an inkling that maybe there's a way out of this. Maybe there's a way forward. Maybe things won't always be this bad. If, and then fill in the blank, right?
Yep.
So when we get to step 3, we're acknowledging, we're saying, okay, like step 1, we had to acknowledge. Step 2, we think about it. Step 3, we acknowledge that there's hope. That if I start to believe that if I do these things in this way, I will go from here to there. And that's something we didn't have just 2 steps ago. We thought we had hit the end of the world, the end of the process. This terrible state I'm in is as good as it will ever get. And that's pretty hopeless. It's like when you go to the hole on day 1. And you got years to go, right? It's like but eventually you start to adjust and make sense of the world around you. Now, we are going to go over step 3, but I'm just trying to create the connection. Step 3 is more self-reflection, more acceptance, but it's the first step that really we acknowledge growth. That we're starting to grow in this process of seeking change and recovery. I'm starting to heal. You go to the ER, you go to intensive care, and those things are kind of like, ER is like patch them up. Intensive care is like, let's wait and see what happens. By step 3, they're starting to come check the Band-Aids to see if they're healing. So by step 3, you're starting to get a little bit of healing. You're starting to understand why it was important to surrender. Right? I can't, we throw our hands up. We're basically saying, I surrender, right? I can't do this, right? And it's kind of incredible how we think about that, right? Like, I can't do it. We do this. We're basically saying, I'm letting go of the control I think I had that I never had. When that car was going downhill, there was, for a moment, you thought you had control, but in hindsight, you realize I never had control. Once it started going down, I was not a factor anymore. It had taken over.
Absolutely.
Right? It had taken over. So think of step 3 as you're starting to regain some balance. And isn't that incredible? Here I'm saying that when you look at your relationships and you want to manage those relationships, that all of a sudden you start to experience some balance in your life. Think about that, man. That's an incredible moment when you realize that you are establishing some balance. And in a world that has had no balance. That makes sense, right? Like, absolutely. It's no small thing to get to a point where you're starting to say, I have balance. All right, let's get to step 3 then. We are on page, it's a long one. I'm on page, the bottom of 16. What page are you on?
Bottom of 15.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need the new final
word.
Version. Yeah.
It's not final. It's the final for that one, but it's in
right. It'll never be done though. And here's the thing, bro. That's one of the things I love about this is it'll never truly be done. It'll be built on forever. Like,
yeah.
It'll be built on forever. And that's amazing, man. And it's amazing to be a part of that. So
And as we go, I'm going to be asking us like reflection questions, because step 3 is a lot more reflection. So our step 3 says, made a decision to live. Let's just stop right there. Made a decision to live.
To
man.
live.
If I had to distill this down, it was like, I'm gonna live. You ever watch those movies where someone, they're trapped and they're like, we're gonna die here, and then someone says, no, we're gonna live, and then you see it kind of become infectious, right? Everyone is trying to live.
Yeah.
Made a decision to live.
Oh, sorry.
Our lives through the practice of spiritual principles, and we talked a lot about these principles yesterday or last weekend. Seeking the path of spirituality, so essentially seeking the path of connection, right? Feeling connected, making connections, taking care of our connections as we understood them, right? So we understand that these principles and the connections you're going to have are very tailor-made. It's very unique and specific to you. However, we recognize there's a lot of similarities in there, but what we're not doing is pigeonholing you into just one of the choices that you have. There's we're basically saying, choose your healing potion. You chose your poison. Now choose the potion that you want to live with, right? Take time for soul searching. So remember, I've been talking about we are reflecting. So there's soul searching, so to speak. To live an authentic life, you just first know what holds importance to you. This is exactly the buildup of what we've been talking about. What is important to you? And understanding why it's important to you. Like, that's critical, man. Like we need to know why these things matter so much to us. Right? It's not enough to just know what's important, but why is that important to you, man? And you can see that takes reflection.
Yeah.
Now, you might know, Monte, that your kids are number 1 on your list. So I'm just using it as an example. That'll take you far. But in relationships, you always want to deepen those relationships regardless of how good they are. Right? So you get married and you tell your wife, I love you, or your husband, I love you, right? What that maintains the relationship. What deepens the relationship is when you dive into the why. Here are the reasons why. And as you said earlier about the literature, it's never ending. It's always evolving. Those reasons mature over life, they deepen over life, and they need to be communicated. What we tend to make the mistake of doing is, iterating, declaring our love, but not going much further than the declaration verbally, and which, we like to think people should know I love them. My kids should know. And those are the kids that grew up and say, my dad never said he loved me. I know he did, but he never said, right? And so you maintain, but you don't close the distance, right? And we're trying to, so remember, step 1 was we had put so much distance between what we loved and ourselves that the relationship was essentially non-existent. It was so far. However, we know that's an illusion because you can't really sever the connection. And I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. I was in Waupun, recently arrived to Waupun. I was in the hole. I was next to this 15-year-old kid or 16-year-old kid. His name was Tuffy. He had a life sentence. He had murdered someone. And we were just talking. I wasn't even on this path yet. We were just talking. And I asked him, we were talking, he was telling me about what happened. And I asked him, are you still mad about it? It was just a curious question, right? Like, are you still mad about what happened? And this kid, this teenager says, I wasn't mad 5 seconds after I did it. And you could hear the regret in his voice because he was essentially saying, I made a decision based on how I felt in that moment, but just a few moments later, I didn't feel that way. Right? Like that, that was like a whoa. And it was different for me because I had anger that lasted for years. Now, here's what's incredible about this, right? I think he is evidence of this statement I'm going to make. For everyone listening on this comment, I'm going to share something I've shared before, but I'm going to say it again. I could say this every other week and it would still turn lights on for folks. The average lifespan of an emotion, Monte, is how long? Do you remember?
7 seconds.
How much?
No, thought. I know thought is 7 seconds.
An emotion.
Yeah.
7 seconds.
7 seconds, yeah.
So let's put this on the spectrum, right? 7 seconds. I just said I've been mad for years. So, Monte, how does that make sense? If
it doesn't, that means that if you've been mad for that long, that means, right? And this is something we've talked about and learned together. Something that I've learned is that if I think about something for the entirety of the day, it means at some point I've made the choice to continue to consciously pay attention to that thought, right? Same with my emotion. It's not, well, yeah, it is hard. If you don't know and you don't understand, it's hard. But once you know and you understand that my thought right now or my feeling right now can be different in 7 seconds, it's much easier to make it different in 7 seconds. If you don't, if you harbor that hatred, that anger, and you feed it, and you continue to focus on it, it's never going to go away. Like, you're making a choice not to let it go away. Because if you just let it slide, if you let that thought process do its own course, its natural course, it goes away. Right?
It goes away to a degree, but you're right on. We're replaying the reason to stay mad. So you have to imagine. So Missy says, I need to stop being mad because I can stay mad forever. Now, here I'm gonna flip this on you, Missy. You said if it wasn't for my kids, I'd be in for life. So it sounds like your kids are strong motivating factors. If you can restrain yourself from killing someone for your kids, use that same energy for the reason not to be mad. You can also use them to motivate you for reasons not to be mad, not to just cage your anger, but to release and transform your anger, right? It's the same things that have held you down will one day hold you up. That's in my TED Talk, right? The things that you think hold you down, the things that anchor you to that anger are the exact same things that will anger you into releasing and healing and recovering and changing. It's all energy. It's just energy. Gasoline is bad if it blows up in your face, but you'll love it if it gets your car going. It's the same energy. It's just how we process. And so if you're saying my kids help me from not murdering, all right, my kids can help me, to motivate me to heal. We can't just remember, Martha, when we learned this from Marcus a long time ago, you can't exchange a cage for a cage and call it freedom. You can't cage up your anger and say, I'm barely hanging on, I'm barely controlling myself, and still talk about freedom. Because what you have to do is convert the energy that drives you to anger to drive you towards other things that are better serving you, right? Easier said than done. Sounds so simple, and you can feed it. Because remember, when you're on death row, you still got to get fed. Everyone gets a sandwich. It's how you feed it. You got to feed it. That rage that's in me is still fed, but it's fed differently. It's fed for a different reason. I'm no longer running from the part of the anger that I used to put in a cage.
Right.
I have a different relationship with that part of the anger. The Incredible Hulk is the person who said it the best. He said, "How do you control it?" You know, he said, "I'm always angry." He just learns to walk with the anger differently,
Suffer well.
right? He's not in competition with it anymore. He's not fighting it anymore. And so it's important to you. Why? If controlling your anger is important to you, your reason for wanting to heal could be even more important to you. And so if healing becomes more important to you, guess what? The anger has to give way to healing, because what you've attached importance to will change, and therefore your momentum and energy will change. Right?
I agree.
Again, I know it sounds simple, but let's get into step 3 a little bit more. When we think of the virtues of this step, many words may rush. So, like, what is it that's important to me? And so we get a floodgate. Remember last week we said, well, where do I start? And I said basically anywhere. You know, when you're overwhelmed, just pick one. Right? Perhaps none quicker than the word finally. Finally, we reconnect with people, places, and things that make living here, staying here, worthwhile. Finally, we find some relief. The first thing that happened when we started this process was becoming aware of all these things, right? That drove us to insanity, that ultimately, fundamentally disconnected us from our path, from our relationships, and from ourselves, including our anger. My anger probably did more to separate me from the world than anything else. But underneath that anger was a lot of pain, trauma, suffering, covered up with resentment, covered up with anger. So now at step 3, and I'm on the next page. It says step 3 is where we choose a spiritual path for our change and recovery. There you go. Right there. By now, on this step, you realize that if I practice these principles, right? If I recommit to these principles, I'm going to have balance in my life. I'm going to realize that change and recovery is possible, that I can be delivered, so to speak, from this anger, from these dilemmas, from this insanity, from this lifestyle. Right? If I do these things, remember the promise that we looked at last week was these benefits will come. It's just give and take. In Lakota, we call it wopila. We call it giveaway. Right? Like you breathe in and you breathe out. You can't just breathe in and you can't just breathe out. So when we take in all this anger and we just hold it, you can do that for a long time, but essentially at some point when you breathe out, it can't be just to hold it in longer. It's to exchange that energy for something that you can bring back in that will suit you better. Right? Why do you think a lot of us breathe so heavy when we're angry?
Yeah.
And what we should see that as is a filtration system, but what we should breathe like we're a filtration system, but the way we typically breathe is like we're a container. Containers hold things. Filtration system let things move through and out, and then it passes it through this filter of sorts that cleans it or separates the things we want and don't want in it, right? We should be join the crowd, Heather. That's all of us, Heather. That's every piece of literature, every movie you ever watch, it is always. And so we don't need to feel like that's a special burden. That is the process. Forgiving ourselves, overcoming. Yeah, we're living in this body that is doing these things with us. And yes, you're not alone.
You talk about the exchange, right? The wopala, right?
Yeah.
And if you ever really focus on it, think about why every time we're angry, as we realize what we're doing, we have to let go of our breath, right? Because we're holding it, right? We're in there, and we're always gripping on something. That's why we think about that hatred for so long, or that anger, or that fear, or whatever it is that's driving us, right? And that thought process that keeps us focused on this negative aspect for so long, right? It's the same with our breathing, and breathing's really. I love the fact that you likened breathing, right, to our recovery, because we do. We'll breathe it in. We're angry and we're holding our breath, right? We're in this rage and we're just holding our breath, and we struggle until we almost black out, right? Because we're just holding it, and then you let it go. That's why you always hear about that release. And when we liken something to growth, we always say it was like letting go of my oxygen, right? It was like taking it.
And remember, we're not recovering from myself as a whole. There are parts of ourself that we are recovering from, because there are parts of ourselves that we need to love more, because those things will guide us through this, right? Remember, we are no longer in the disease model where I am the addiction, and within that cancer cell is a tiny portion of me.
Yeah.
We're saying you are the cell, and within that bigger picture is a portion of this disease that you live with, but you are not the disease. So you're not recovering from myself as a whole. We're all, think about this. The vast majority of America, of the world, of the human population are not criminals. But if this is a universal thing that we all struggle with, here's evidence of that. About 80% of every person in the world, 80%, 8 out of 10, of 80% of all the people in the world who have ever tried to diet, out of all those people, 80% of the people fail.
Yep.
That is the struggle with self. We can't even stop eating cookies. We're asking folks to do something else, like bigger than that, harder than that, right? It is going to be a struggle. Now,
I agree.
Now, Missy, I don't agree. Some people don't get caught, but even when you factor the rate of people who don't get caught, the vast majority of the world are not criminals. Literally. You will come to a point where you realize there are more good people in the world than bad. It's just that bad it's a false comparison. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. The impact of doing something bad is far bigger and sensational, right? So you're not a bad. That's us. That's me and Monte. If you heard some of our comments, right? Heather's like, I gotta have cookies. I know my granddaughter on the phone the other day was like, I love cookies. Like she's down with like the legitimate cookie monster. Anyway,
she's talking.
Ironically, huh?
The last time I seen her, she was so tiny. Your granddaughter.
She's talking now.
Man,
she's talking now. And my grandson is starting to like. He's a real porker in there. Anyway,
yeah.
As a part of another example, what step 3 was, I said the paragraph would be making a decision. Monte, scroll down a little bit. It'll start with making a decision. There you go. In a nutshell, I basically said step 3 is a lot like, if we think about the steps up to this point, it's a lot like, think of marriage, building up to marriage, right? I love this analogy. Step 1, person catches our eye. We like this person. Oh, that person catches my eye for whatever reason. But I don't know if it's going to work. You know, like that. It's when they catch your eye right away, we see how far away that person is from us. And we don't know if we can close the distance there, right? But by step 2, we start thinking, maybe I could still ask them out, right? So step 2 is like, maybe should I, could I, would she say yes? How would I do it? We start talking in the mirror, trying to figure out like what the approach might look like. Step 3 is when we decide to go ahead and ask the person for a date, right? You follow me? So now Step one, looks nice, but too far away. Step two is, well, maybe if I tried, I could. Maybe I'll do it this way. Step three is like, okay, ma'am, sir, what are you doing tomorrow for dinner? You know, something like that. Don't ever get married.
Right.
Missy, stop. Missy's like, don't ever get married. You're talking to two married men. No. There was a time I felt that way, but I came full circle. Now, the rest of the steps, remember, I've been saying this. So you get a yes on step 3. You get like, yeah, we can try this. Step 4 through 12 are all about deepening those relationships now. So right now you're asking yourself, am I willing to go on this journey? Right? Am I willing to say I do? Now is the time to ask yourself if you're going to jump on or keep observing. Right? Are you going to be able to do it? And then as you scroll down one there, there's a quotation I used from step 3 of NA right there, which says we made a decision, and we made the decision. Not our families, not drugs, not our probation officer, not judge. We did. We said for the first time, I'm going to make this decision to do something for myself. Now, we have to attend to our basic needs. And I'll tell you something, and I know Missy's kind of playing, not playing. What I have learned about life, and want to tell me if this is true for you, whenever I draw a hard line in the sand, that becomes a pain point for me.
Yeah.
It becomes something that I struggle with, because now I've told life, I challenge you, and the universe hears, oh, you want to be challenged.
I know. And then the universe says, hold on, hold my beer, watch this. And you're through, right? Like, life is going to be, I think life actively listens for the people who say that this is the line. No, nothing's going to get past here. And it goes, okay, watch this. Hold my beer. I'm from Wisconsin. And then it fucks you. But yeah, absolutely. I've been with,
and we have to think about our basic needs, right? And so basic needs, remember, if we go back to the 8 relationships.
Yep.
The relationships with self. What are your basic needs mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually? And so if you have these pain points, you know that those basic needs aren't being met. And you know they're not being met when you're using defenses, right? When you're at war or at odds with something, someone, or someplace.
mm-hmm.
You know your basic needs are not met when you feel like you are at war. Whenever you have these hard lines in the sand, whenever you have these, I will never, ever again, whenever you have those things, you are not at peace. You are not nurturing yourself. You're doing what you have to survive. And whenever you're in a survival mode, that's step 1. That's going back to step 1, right? Whenever you feel like, I can't stop the fight and I can't stop fighting. I can't let my guard down. I won't let my guard down. And it's because we think we figured out the solution, right? Normally when we do things like, I will never, never, ever, right? Whenever we say things like that, we think we have figured out the one way to keep ourselves safe. And I tell you, if I was a robber and I saw a safe in your house, that's not going to deter me. That's going to interest me. Right? It's going to draw more of my attention. Defenses tend to do that with life. Life will say, oh, you have trust issues. Let me give you enough trust issue situations and scenarios until you resolve it. Right? And you have every reason to feel the way that you feel about life. All I'm saying is not here to judge how you feel. At some point, we're just asking ourselves, is the way I'm posturing, is the way I'm engaging in life bringing me closer to the things I love about myself, about life, about the world around me? Or is it taking me further from those things? And remember, anytime you're creating more distance, you're out of balance, because we need some of all of it. We need some of the good, some of the bad, some of the great, some of the horrible. It's just the way life is, right? Remember, gasoline is terrible if it blows up in your face, but it's wonderful when you need it to get your car to drive. The only difference is what our experience with it was, and how we interpret that experience and what we do with that experience. So, assholes coming into our life, that's a bad experience. Now we're on the hook to determine, what am I going to do with that experience? Am I going to let it pull me further out of life and out of balance? Or do I deal with that in some way, shape, or form and still find ways to balance myself in all these other areas, right? The shit that's been done to you, I'm still in family court. In fact, I got court tomorrow. I've been divorced since 2014. I'm going to family court again. I have full custody of these girls. They live with me. I'm still in fucking family court. Now, I do my best not to stay stuck, because bitterness visits me every so often. It says, Sammy, I'm here to see you.
Right.
We have a visit today. I try to refuse the visitors, but there I go. There I go, walking to the visiting room, right? But the difference today is that bitterness does not stay in my heart. It visits me, but it doesn't camp out.
Right.
I'm like, sorry, I'm not buying it today, and to be honest, I cry, I get frustrated, I get hurt,
Yep.
But the same thing I tell my girls, I tell myself, like, we're not going to let anything like this knock us off our ass. Like, we are going to be okay.
We
to do with it. We got each other. We'll be okay.
We're still relatively fresh when we're in step 3, right? We're still new to this, but we've already developed tools from 1 and 2 that we can apply to our lives at 3, right? Like the acknowledgement, or the knowledge that I'm choosing, and we learned this really early on, I'm choosing to focus on something if it lasts longer than 7 seconds, right? That little bit of knowledge, right? That small piece is a major help to my future walk, right? And to my present. The most important part is my now, right? Like my right now. I know I have plans for my tomorrow. I know I have plans for my next year. I know I have plans for my next 10 years, right? But right now, this moment, this second, this pain, this suffering, this addiction at this moment is the most important. And knowing that I can acknowledge that if it's there for longer than 7 seconds, I'm reoccurring it, right? I'm bringing it back. I'm holding it there, and being able to go, that's life changing, right?
Yeah.
Every time I go through every time I go through the book, bro, as I read the steps, they become the most important and my favorite one at that at that moment, right? Like step 1 is something that you and I talked about early in my recovery, and how militant I was about step 1, right? About having people tell themselves that, right? Like I used to talk about life or death, right? Just like it was when I was, as a criminal, everything becomes life or death, right? We use that fatal mentality on a normal fucking basis, right? We can make anything into a fatal situation. Bitch, what do you mean you don't have pickles for my hamburger, right? Like, I'm not eating that fucking hamburger. Give me my fucking money back, right? You don't got no fucking choice. You fucked me. You didn't put pickles on my shit, right? We can change anything into this fucking life or death, fuck my, don't fuck with me. I'm a man shit, right?
Yeah.
And as we've grown, right, it's become Every step has become the most important step as I walk through it, as I go through it, every time I go through it.
Let me ask this question of the people listening today.
That's you guys, chat.
Let's say that you have like this lingering issue, whatever it is, anger, resentments, trauma. Let's say you have it right now. Not asking you to release it, to change it, to do anything different. All I'm asking is, are you willing to consider the idea? Just are you even willing to see the idea that it exists out there that says it won't always be this way? Right? Because when you're in the hole with all the shit on top of you, it feels like it will always be that way. It right? That's step one, right? That's pre-step one. That's what it feels like before we get to step one, right? I'm stuck. There's no way out. Are we at least willing to say it won't always be this way, right? So, absolutely, right? So if we have that, and when I'm dealing with forgiveness, and I've talked to thousands of people at this point about forgiveness, is a lot of people are like, I won't, I can't, I shouldn't, it's unforgivable. No, I will not forgive that, right? Why is that up to me to forgive, right? Well, there's all these things that people say about it, right? All I ever ask is, look, those are all options. Those are all on the table. Everything you just said is on the table. We can take a coin and put a piece to represent that idea. The no, never, why, can't, unforgivable. Let's say all that's on the table. Those are all your truths right now. On the table, can I at least just put something, a placeholder, that represents forgiveness? I just want to know if I can put it on the table. We don't got to talk about it. I just want to know, like, if I can take this object and put it on the table with all those other things. It's not like you never have to pick it up ever. Can I just, because sometimes the idea of just putting this in proximity to you is overwhelming. But most folks were like, you can put it on table, but I'll never touch it. That's gold. That's gold. Because just 5 seconds ago, it wasn't even on the table. There are things that may not ever happen. Like, could I win the lottery? Yes, that's 1 in 10 billion, right? We can at least put it on the table.
I'm winning
right?
it. I'm winning it this week. That's my retirement plan.
I'm not that foolish anymore. I'll play, but I don't think I'm ever going to win. Maybe I'll get lucky. I don't know.
We spend $2 every time.
It's like fishing. I'm never going to catch anything, but I still put my pole in the water. Right? So Missy says, yeah, I'm guessing other folks are just thinking about it. Nobody wants to be mad forever, but we can become devoted to that anger. We can become devoted, and because it becomes such a constant in our life, we have a relationship with it. And it's hard to let go of relationships even when they're bad.
Yeah. Anger is as addictive as anything else. Living off that anger.
It fuels us, there are trucks out there that can run on different fuels. I want one of them, right? There's one that can run on diesel, gas, some kind of corn fuel, kerosene, right? I want a motor. I want something with a motor like that so that I know I have options like to run that engine, because a lot of times I feel like I'm just stuck with or limited to, right? I don't understand what Missy is saying. My dad won twice.
The lottery.
I'm not sure. Oh, the lottery.
Yeah. Sorry, paying for a wedding.
Got it. Look, when in step 3, we realize there's hope. So when we can say, yeah, I don't think it's going to always be this way, that's hope. And where we need to go from hope to action is basically saying, all right, if it's on the table, then are you willing to commit to a process? See, because a lot of us think we're in a process, but we're not. A lot of us think we have a plan, but we're winging it. This process is one that, yeah, I'm hoping we can figure things out. I hear you, Missy. And I've been in this spot, myself, and that's one subject. The other subject is you can still heal even if those things don't work out ideally, or even as they work out, but you don't have to wait for it to be done. There's this girl said Songbird. Her name was Songbird. She died after she sang this song. She basically said in an interview, you don't have to wait for everything to be right to be okay. Like, I'm in all this disarray with family court, right? If I was waiting for family court to be over for me to be at peace, I'd be a fucking catastrophe, a wreck over here. Because here I am 10 years into the process of just not wanting to be with somebody and I have never filed to go back to court. Just so you know, I've been dragged back to court 100 times at this point. I have never been the one to file, and I am not the one being held in contempt. I am not the one being fined. I am not the one losing visitation. It is not me. Even the social worker said this is not an issue that dad has to fix. Right? I still have to show up. I still have to pay the money. I have a million reasons to be resentful. I refuse to anchor myself to that anymore. I just show up, see it as a part of life, do what I have to do. And it bothers me for a moment. It bothers me now to even talk about it. I have to go on this call, but it won't be a festering wound. I won't let it. It's a cut right now. And I'll adjust. I'll put stitches on it, antibiotic, whatever. I've already determined over the years and months that I'm not going to let it disrupt me. It bothers me for a moment, but it's not going to overshadow or take my life. It doesn't affect my gratitude for things, like that's, I never thought I'd get married. You heard me say it, you saw me go through it. Hell, when I wrote step 3 and I used the analogy for marriage, I had just asked my wife for a divorce, and yet I still found a way to use it as an analogy.
How much did forgiveness play in that?
And maybe we need to pause now that we've gone through these initial 3, right? Because what we need to be talking about is forgiveness.
Right. So let me say something, you guys. Forgiveness isn't a 2-party mandatory situation. I want you guys to understand that something that I've learned throughout this program is that sometimes it just takes me to forgive to move forward. And that's something Sammy has really, really pushed into my brain over the last decade. So this is a relationship 11 years long, right? Sammy's one of the longest relationships I've had ongoing in my lifetime, right? Like where we continuously communicate with each other. And one of the hardest things for me to understand was forgiveness was on me, and that the other person didn't even have to be a part of the situation. They don't even have to know that I've moved past it for me to be okay and to heal. So,
well, I think that is where I'm at. Like, I still hold true to those beliefs, but I think I've advanced that belief a little bit more since, because I spend so much time talking about. I'm always discovering things about it, right? I think we can even make it something else, right? And I'm not trying to go too far here, but let's take, for example, the fact that 2 things about this traumatic event. I was sexually assaulted as a toddler by my mom's brother for years. He also like assaulted my sister. He assaulted us together at the same time, side by side. That's one. What's even worse than that is my mother allowed it to happen and denied and refused to do anything about it. And then her mom denied, it happening and willing to help us, right? And it goes on and on and on. The saga continues, right? All these generations later. Now, most folks who I've talked about this are like, that is certainly one of those unforgivable situations. There's no amount of, and I've never received one, nor do I expect, there's no apologizing. And if I did get the apology, the big apology, what would it really take away or diminish or reduce the weight? It doesn't, it does not have the value I think it has. It doesn't have the earned interest that I'm waiting for. Like, there's nothing that comes out of that lessens the burden of those scars. No, just thinking about that. We could spend an entire fortune on therapy trying to resolve all of that within me. But here's what I've gotten. Here's what I've gotten through and to at this point in my life. And this is the Instagram post you shared. What if I said that we could think about forgiveness in these two ways? To not forgive means you have to live in the past perpetually. That's where you live. You're in this moment, but living in the past. Or forgiveness could be that you choose to walk through the door to a better future. You're in this doorway. You're on the opposite side of the door right now. You're in the past. You're on the past side of the door. So if you were to look at this door, on one side it says past, on the other side it says future. You are living on the side of the door that puts you squarely in the path, right, of the past. Now, you either get to choose to stay in that room for whatever reason. I'm not here to assess the reason for that. Or you could walk through the door choosing to live in your future, like to chase your future. We're either chasing the past, and if you read the pillars, I've said in there, you cannot outrun your demons. You cannot outrun your ghosts. You cannot outrun your past. You just can't. There's no way to change reality. Right? What if I said we just got to choose? Do we want more of the past, or do we want a better future? Do we want a brighter future? There is no hope in the past. And whatever we're waiting for in there, it's not coming around. And what's crazy about it is, even if we got it exactly the way we thought we wanted it, by the time you get it and when you get it and the way you get it, it's probably not going to do much for you. And then you have another resentment. Here's the other resentment, right? You mean I waited all this fucking time for this big, thing to happen, and I'm still feeling fucking empty?
Yeah.
Then you realize you just wasted all this fucking time. Now, I agree 100% with you. This is a one-on-one thing. This is not you and someone else. It could be. There's a version of that, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
And a lot of times it's not going to be. And you don't even have to wait for the person to catch up to you to do it. You can do it faster than someone isn't on their own path. You might need them to be, here on their journey for you to forgive them, but you don't have to wait for them to get here. You could do it anywhere on this path, anywhere. And eventually you hope that they get there, which would make it all the better. But we don't have to wait for them to actually get to a certain point to make progress in our life. We just don't. And that doesn't mean you're leaving anyone behind. It just means you're doing something else while they're doing that. And you could still be walking the same path hand in hand, side by side. You're just emotionally, mentally, spiritually getting somewhere, and you're on your own time.
Yeah.
In your own way. Right. And a lot of people say, I've lost, I'll lose, and that's a big fear when you're in the beginning of change. You don't want to lose the people that you think you're associated to and connected to. You won't. It's not you losing anything. Look, it's not the same thing to lose someone as it is for them to choose a different life than the one you've chosen. Those are two different concepts, right? I told my guys what I was doing. And in the beginning, full-heartedly, I said, any of you who want to follow me are welcome to. But here's what I'm doing. A lot of them three of them chose to go with me. But then on that journey, I realized I can't lead you through this. You've got to find your own way through the woods. Like we're not all going to the same endpoint. Like you got to find your own way. We can't do this together. I'm sorry. You got to figure this out. And they did. But the vast majority of the people I thought I was losing actually just chose to do what they were going to do. No hard feelings, man. Like that's your path. I didn't lose anyone. It was just I'm going left, you're going right. That's how this shit is. I moved to Missouri, you stayed in Wisconsin, right? I don't feel like I'm losing anything, right?
Yeah.
It's our choices, and I'm happy for your life and you're happy for my life, and same, right? It's not a loss. It's just in some ways we live in two different states, but in the other ways we're on the same path side by side every day, heading in this direction, right? It's all perspective, man. And so when we talk about forgiveness, believe it or not, it's less about behavior and more about perspective.
I agree.
Where do you want to live in life? Because the past has you angry. The past has you uncertain. The past has you full of anxiety. The future might feel like it does, but it hasn't happened. So those things don't really exist other than in our minds. And I can tell you this, no matter how good or bad the past is, it won't compare to the future and what it has to offer. As bad as the future could be, you've survived all this terrible stuff. I think you're going to survive your future.
So one of my smartest and longest living friends is Heather. And she said, I'll lose anyone except my kids to find myself. My fear sometimes is losing things about myself I thought made me who I am. So I don't know if you caught that. I caught that, right? I thought made me who I am, right? Like you are who you are, right? Like your makeup isn't going to change because you realize that something you thought in the past is no longer valid in the present, right? It doesn't change the core of who you are, right? Like you can change the core of who you are. You can change what you are. You can change and decide to go in a different direction of life, but that doesn't change the core of you. Like you're still you. You're still the same loving, caring, kind.
Well,
I will kick your ass human being.
Remember, we just said you're not losing anyone. They're choosing,
including yourself.
My son has chosen his path. I didn't lose my son. My son doesn't want to follow the path I'm on. It's not about control. It's not about power. It's not about influence. It's like we are going in this direction. At a certain point in a certain person's life, they will choose their own journey, right? And it's not me losing. I would love for you to be with me my whole life, but I understand that as a part of your journey, you have to go your own way, son.
Yeah, you had.
And I'll be here.
Dance with me, and you blew it. You started liking girls. What's going on?
And I really like what you said about the fear sometimes is losing things about myself. Tell me how that happens. Like really spell it out. How will you lose something about yourself? Because even if you change, the attachment to who you were will always be there. And if it really has value, it will survive the change. But no one should still be the same way they were because we're always growing. You might maintain certain things about you. So I'm still an asshole. Right?
Yes,
I still have like an aggression streak in me. I am still,
Ooh, attachment and
I,
reputation.
I'd say it's
A
neither.
mixture.
It's surrender. See, surrender, attachment, surrender, reputation. Because none of that shit is keeping you afloat. I left a life where 10,000 men and women, stood behind me. I left that life while I was in the prime of it. I don't feel like I lost anything. However, I'm human. Every so often, I miss it, but not enough. It's just the insanity coming to visit me, but it's not enough to make me change what I'm doing.
And listen, everything about that life wasn't all darkness and death and negativity. There were aspects of love and friendship and companionship that we didn't receive in other places within that life of criminality, right? I have friends now who were my brothers then, who are on the same path as me now, and we can still remember with fondness some of the things that happened during the depth of our insanity, right? Like, and let it be that juxtaposition, because yes, we were friends through criminality at that point in our life. Street life was all we knew. But today, right, neither, the guys I'm talking about, none of us are on that path anymore, but our bonds are just as strong. And we love each other because we can actively see where we're going in life and love all of the directions that we're going in, right? Like, everything about that life wasn't hell. There were aspects of that life, that bonds that we created with some people that are still good bonds to today. So unless they're still living that life, then I ain't got nothing to do.
That goes back to show you that not everything is ever 100% good. Not everything is 100% bad, but there can be a disproportionate amount of one or the other, right? So go back to when you were a kid. Heather, what was one of your favorite cartoons or shows when you were 5 years old? Just type in the chat. What was one of your favorite shows when you were like 5? Or however young you can remember?
Thundercats.
No, Thundercats. Something wrong with you. However, close to that, close to that was Spectre Man.
Yeah.
It's on Channel 66. You probably didn't get to watch that channel. Channel 66. After school at 3:30, come home from school, Spectre Man would be on one of so Spectre Gadget. Now, Heather, be completely like open. I don't know how old you are, but at the age you're at now, is that still something that you really spend a lot of time committed to watching? Is that something that you still like watch? Still watch, don't watch. I got it. But I'm asking right now, is that a show you still watch like you did when you were like 5? See what she has to say. Now, while we're waiting for that answer. That's not what I'm asking, though. Do you still watch? Like, I would come home from school religiously every day at 3:30 as a child. Maybe I was 6 or 7 and watch Spectre Man. I would watch it, but it's not something I'm really watching now. Would you still, right? Did you lose that part of yourself or did it just change? Right? You mature and you change and you evolve. So whatever you shed from who you used to be and the way you used to think about yourself, it's not a loss. You needed that process, that part of your life to get to where you're at today for whatever reason. And that's just a perspective of how we can look at it, right? Remember, the things that held you down can one day hold you up. We're not saying distance yourself from everything bad about yourself. We're saying you have to think about it differently. That's what step 3 is helping us do, right? You lost relationships, repair them. How can we repair them? And we go through this process. You lost a connection with yourself, repair it. Now, trust me, when you come out on the other side of that repair, you're going to have a lot of valuable information, a lot of valuable experience that you've gleaned from what it was like when you were that way and the way you are now. So, formers, me and Monte, build on all the lessons in my life. Listen,
I fucking love you, Heather.
listen,
You.
listen. I am watching anime all the time. Like on Max, there are a bunch of Superman animes that I watch that are pretty cool. Anyway, I'm not here to judge. Live your life.
Gotta wrap
No one's
up.
perfect. I'm a grandpa too. So, listen, we're over time. We're gonna wrap up here. This has turned into a really robust combo. I don't think we should just jump into step 4 next week.
Okay.
I think we need to stop and pause and think about talk about this whole concept of forgiveness, which we've talked about in the past, but I think we're at a natural point where we need to talk about the 3 pillars. So maybe next week we'll
that's a
start on
good
the
idea.
pillars.
I think that's a great idea.
Peace
Thank
out, everyone. I've got to go start my chores.
you. What are you gonna go do? Set your dog-proof raccoon traps?
Yes, I am. As a matter of fact.
Dude, that was so fucking cool. All right, everybody. I love you guys. Thank you for participating today.
Peace.
All of you guys are a huge part of my journey.
Follow me
my
on TikTok.
walk. Yeah,
I'm trying to go viral.
Sam, Max, whatever it is, I'll send.
It's
if you want
Simonics, man.
Simonics, if you want his link, let me know. I'll send it to you. I love you guys, bro. I love you, man. Thank you for everything. Week in, week out, man. You guys, we will see you next Sunday morning at 9:30. We appreciate all the likes and the shares. We've had over 50 comments today. That all boosts the algorithm, and it all helps. I don't care if we ever go any bigger than what we are.
I gotta go.
Every comment. All right, brother. Love you, bro. Every comment, every like, all of it helps the next person just as much as it helps us. So bang it out, you guys. We will see you next week. Love you guys. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your life.